Well, North Carolina Democrats have got the best news of the 2026 Senate election cycle so far. Former Governor Roy Cooper, very popular former governor and former Attorney General of the state of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, will be launching his bid for the 2026 Senate election in North Carolina next week, according to sources familiar with Roy Cooper's plans. Now, this is major news for the Democrat Party in North Carolina and nationally for the Democrat Party. They thought they had already struck it big when incumbent Senator Thom Tillis announced that he was not going to run for re-election in 2026. He's a moderate Republican running in a state that Donald Trump narrowly won in 2024 by 3 points. Remember, this was the one state that Donald Trump won in 2020 that was a swing state. Joe Biden, of course, won all the other swing states except for North Carolina in 2024. But now this will be a major shakeup in this election, and we will be putting out a new Senate election prediction. We know that North Carolina is a purple state, and this will be one of the most competitive races in the country. And he will instantly become the Democrat favorite to be the Democrat nominee in 2026. And not just the nominee, he will probably instantly become the favorite to win in 2026 in the North Carolina Senate election. Now, this is a seat that has been held by Thom Tillis since 2014. He won back in that big wave of Republican support back in 2014. He beat incumbent senator at that time, Kay Hagan, who had initially come to power back in 2008 during Barack Obama's first election victory. Now, fast forward 2024, Thom Tillis wins by a point and a half. Fast forward to 2020, and although most polls showed that Thom Tillis would lose re-election in 2020, he swept by one re-election by about roughly under 2 percentage points in 2020. Now, come 2026, it's a completely different conversation. Incumbent Senator Thom Tillis, after he announced he was not going to vote for Donald Trump's one big, beautiful bill, came out and announced that he was not going to run for re-election in 2026. Now, in our election map, that instantly made this a toss-up race. Now, with Democrats running and Roy Cooper, the former governor, running in this state will instantly become a tilt Democrat state. This is a state that Democrats will be favored to win in, not by large margins, not by 5, not by 10 points. Democrats will be favored by a half a point, by a point. This will still be an extremely competitive race going into 2026, but it will help Democrats out nationally. Roy Cooper is a fundraising machine in the state of North Carolina. He has a political fundraising apparatus second to none in the state of North Carolina and is able to raise funds in a state that has been reliably red for the last 2-3 decades. Ultimately, this will allow national Democrats to focus their money on states that are more competitive than maybe North Carolina will now be. They'll be able to pour more money into Maine, flipping the state of Maine. They'll be able to defend their incumbents in Georgia and be able to defend whoever the Democrat nominee in the state of Michigan is for the Senate in 2026. Of course, Gary Peters announced he was not going to run for re-election earlier this year, but now Democrats are going to have more cash to pour into more competitive races. Maybe they try and pour some money into Alaska, maybe Texas. I think it's very unlikely that they have any big victories outside of North Carolina or Maine, but still, they could have an opportunity. They could force Republicans to spend more money in likely or safe seats in 2026. But ultimately, this is the best news for the Democrat Party. Obviously, we are still waiting on Laura Trump, the daughter-in-law of incumbent President Donald Trump, on whether she will run in this election or not. Right now, a former candidate for North Carolina's 8th congressional district, Don Brown, is the only declared candidate. Laura Trump has publicly expressed interest, and former U.S. Ambassador to Denmark, James Kahan, has also expressed some possible interest in running. Now, there are obviously some other big names that could run here. Big names like Michael Whately. He is the chair of the Republican National Committee. Pat Harrington. He's a representative from North Carolina's 10th congressional district. He just won this election back in November of 2024. So some relatively, unknown names that could be running here. Laura Trump obviously will be the biggest, will probably be able to fundraise the most. But the big question when it comes to Laura Trump, can she win? Does she have the broad appeal like Thom Tillis does? I don't know. That's a big one. Does she have appeal to moderates? Does she have appeal to independents? Does she have an appeal to disenfranchised Democrats? Because we know Roy Cooper does. Because at the same time that you go back to 2016. Roy Cooper wins a close election by a fourth of a point. Unseat the first time a Republican governor was unseated. An incumbent governor lost re-election in 2016. Obviously, this is a sweep election back in 2012. Pat McCrory won this election by roughly 11 points. Fast forward to 2016. Roy Cooper wins this election, becomes the governor of North Carolina at the same time when President Donald Trump wins the state by roughly 4 percentage points in 2016. Fast forward to 2020 at the same time when Donald Trump wins the state by 1.5 percentage points. There's Roy Cooper again. Right again in 2020, Roy Cooper wins re-election by 4.5 points. 4.5 points at the same time when Donald Trump wins the state by almost 2 percentage points. Now, you can go back in Roy Cooper's electoral history. It is very clear that he's a popular Democrat. We go back to some of his electoral history. Go back to the 2000 North Carolina Attorney General race. We know Roy Cooper has never lost an election in the state of North Carolina. He won his first general election roughly by 5 percentage points in 2020. Fast forward to 2004. He wins it by a little smaller margin, a little bigger margin. He wins by roughly an 11-point margin in 2004. Fast forward to 2008. This was obviously the year that Barack Obama became president and won the state of North Carolina. He flipped the state of North Carolina. Remember, this was a state that voted in 2004 for George Bush by 12.5 points. Turn around 4 years later, it votes for Obama by a third of a point. It also voted again for Mitt Romney, so obviously it bounced back. Obama won at one time, but still. Roy Cooper, 2008, the North Carolina Attorney General, wins this election by more than 20 points. More than 20 points. It was so bad for Republicans in 2008. In the 2012 North Carolina Attorney General election, they didn't even run someone. A Republican did not even run. He was unopposed in both the Democrat primary and the general election. That all set him up to run in the 2016 North Carolina gubernatorial election and sweep this election. Let's be honest, you unseated an incumbent governor of the state of North Carolina, something that has never happened before. So we can see, even at the same time, when Donald Trump wins in the state of North Carolina, we can clearly see that Roy Cooper knows how to win, and his successors. Remember, Josh Stein won by 14 points. Yes, was Mark Robinson a horrible candidate? Should he have dropped out 100%? This would have been much, much closer if he would have dropped out. But look, Josh Stein still won by 15 points at the same time when Donald Trump won the state by almost 3.5 points. 3.5 points we're looking at here. But obviously, this is major news. This is exactly what Democrats wanted to see. We've been talking about this for many months now, how this is the best case scenario for the Democrat Party. They believe that North Carolina was the best opportunity to flip a seat in 2026, and now we know that is true. It is 100% true. Now, there is one other Democrat who's also in this race, former Representative Wiley Nickel, a Democrat who served for one term before what Republicans redrew his seat, and he did not run in 2024. Now, he announced his bid back in April. That is, his intention was to run for the Senate in 2026, even though he knew it was most likely that Roy Cooper would be a force to reckon with in the Democrat primary just alone. But Roy Cooper will be a force to reckon with in the general election, and Republicans must take this seriously. I'm not kidding. They must take this seriously. This is not an election to mess around with. We need to nominate the best candidate who can win statewide. That is the reality. We do not need to pick a personality. We do not need to pick someone because we believe they're going to be most loyal to the Republican Party and Donald Trump. We need someone who can win in North Carolina. We know the Republican Party has a bad history of doing this, a very bad history. Look in Arizona in 2024, they nominated Kari Lake for a second time in a statewide election. Ruben Gallego won this election in Arizona. You look in 2022, it was even worse. Republicans nominated Herschel Walker in Georgia. They lost the state. They nominated Kari Lake in Arizona. All of a sudden, Blake Masters in 2022 on the senatorial side. In Pennsylvania, they nominated Mehmet Oz, a terrible choice in this state. Now you go on the gubernatorial side, it's almost even worse. You go in 2022, you have Doug Mastriano in the state of Pennsylvania. You have Kari Lake, 2022, in the state of Arizona. It was just very bad candidates that should not have been run. Because remember, Brian Kemp wins in Georgia by 7 points at the same time Herschel Walker or loses by roughly 3 points in this election. A terrible, terrible, terrible election. But still, folks, we know this is big news for the Democrat Party. This brings Democrats closer to clinching. Now, I shouldn't even say clinching a win in the Senate, because basically they have no shot. Even if everything goes the way the Democrats want in the Senate, they're still only at 49 seats to 51 seats held by the Republicans. They need to flip 2 more on top of Maine. They need to flip 4 seats if they want to regain control of the Senate in 2026. Where are they going to go? Texas, Nebraska, Iowa, Ohio? Like where? There just isn't really anywhere else to go. But looking at the polls for 2026, we can see one thing is clear. Roy Cooper is winning, whether it's over Laura Trump, whether it's over Tom Tillis, regardless. Roy Cooper is the favorite going into this election. And Race to the White House even updated this last month, saying that this is a tilt Democrat seat. They believe that Democrats will flip this seat going into 2026. Now, right now, Republicans are in a desperate situation where they need to coalesce behind a candidate, whether it's Laura Trump. Who is it? Is it Michael Whately? Is it Pat Harrington? Is it Dan Bishop? Who is it? I don't know who the best candidate is at this point in North Carolina, but they need to coalesce. There needs to be a lot of time and effort put into this race because they need to coalesce behind a candidate so they can begin fighting the general election, not fighting inside the Republican Party. But this is the worst news that Republicans could have got in the state of North Carolina in the 2026 Senate elections. But folks, that is going to wrap things up for today. As always, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And as always, folks, we will catch you next time.